Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Iran falls apart after negotiations are rejected on the first day due to unreasonable demands from the hardline faction of the regime. Negotiations between the United States and Iran began in Switzerland under maximum pressure, but the Iranian regime tried to turn the first day into diplomatic theater. The delegation showed up at the Bergenstock resort near Lake Lucerne, but the hardline faction linked to the Revolutionary Guard made it clear they did not want real negotiations about the nuclear program. They wanted to buy time, keep up the pressure in the Strait of Hormuz, and use Lebanon as an excuse to escalate the crisis. The problem is that Trump treated the day as the start of the 60-day deadline and put the countdown on the table. Meanwhile, the Iranian regime itself started to crack in public. A hardline congressman spoke about confidential documents on state television, the broadcast was interrupted, the station opened up internal reactions, and the scandal exposed the fight between the government, parliament, clerics, and the military. At the same time, ships in the Strait of Hormuz began to face new requirements. Israel warned that it would not leave the security zone in Lebanon. And Trump threatened to respond with greater force if Iran continued to use its armed allies to provoke the region. What did the Revolutionary Guard try to hide? Why did the negotiations stall on the first day? How did a regime that promised control end up displaying chaos to the world? I'll tell you all about it in a moment. If you like this kind of straightforward, no-nonsense content, consider subscribing because we have videos like this every day. The talks in Switzerland were set up to open a 60-day window for a possible broader agreement between the United States and Iran. The American delegation arrived with Vice President J.G. Vance as well as Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner in an attempt to turn the memorandum signed days earlier into practical commitments. Qatar and Pakistan entered as mediators, trying to hold together a negotiation that was already tainted by the crisis in the Strait of Hormuz and the attacks linked to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Iran arrived divided. The government wanted to show international presence, but the Islamic Revolutionary Guard and its allies did not want to give up the central point, the nuclear program. The Iranian strategy was to show up at the table, reduce the political weight of the conversation, and try to call everything a technical discussion. In practice, Tehran wanted to tell the world that it was negotiating, but without accepting the negotiation that really mattered. That's where the weakness appeared. When a regime needs to travel all the way to Switzerland to pretend to talk, while its own military disrupts conditions at sea, the message stops being diplomacy and becomes a sign of lack of control. The most serious point came from the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranian regime once again threatened navigation, and it imposed requirements for the passage of vessels. The logic used by the Revolutionary Guard was simple. If they couldn't charge a toll during the ceasefire period, they would create bureaucratic obstacles. Ships would have to request authorization 48 hours in advance, provide a valid contact, wait for analysis, and follow a route defined by the Iranians. This is not normal maritime security. The problem is that Trump didn't accept the blackmail as a diplomatic gesture. He responded by saying that there would be no toll in the strait for 60 days and even hinted that the United States could take on the role of guaranteeing passage if the agreement failed. Trump raised the tone because he understood the maneuver. Tehran wanted to use the pause in hostilities to catch its breath, but without giving up the political weapons it has maintained for decades. The regime wanted relief, money flowing, oil coming back, assets unfrozen, and time to reorganize its military branches. But the US demand was different. Reduce the threat, reopen routes, contain armed allies, and allow real progress in the nuclear discussion. The internal crisis became even more embarrassing on Iranian state television. Mahmoud Nabavian, a hardline affiliated deputy, exposed alleged correspondences, confidential ones, and accused sectors of the regime itself of crossing the line in the negotiations. The interview was cut, the file was taken down, and the state broadcaster classified the episode as a legal violation. The regime reacted quickly, aware of the risk of internal conflict becoming public. In dictatorships, the problem isn't just the leaked content. The problem is that people realize the leaders are accusing each other while pretending to be united. This episode revealed the void at the center of Iranian power. On one side are figures who want to keep negotiations alive to save the economy and avoid a new direct confrontation. On the other side are groups linked to the Revolutionary Guard and the hardliners, who prefer to keep the country in a permanent state of war because it's in this environment that they have more power, arrest more people, exert more control, and distract the population more. The Revolutionary Guard is not just a military force, it has become a parallel power within the Iranian state itself. It controls weapons, political influence, businesses, ports, militias, and part of the repression system. When this group clashes with the civilian government, the entire regime trembles. Pezeshkian tried to toughen his speech so he wouldn't appear weak in front of the military. The Iranian president stated that Tehran does not intend to build a nuclear bomb, but he also said he would not give up the right to enrich uranium. This statement sets a trap for the negotiations. The Iranian government asks for trust but keeps the most sensitive piece on the table, which is wanting economic guarantees without giving up the strategic guarantee, which is wanting relief from sanctions without giving up the mechanism that frightens the region. The Israeli position hardened at the same time. Defense Minister Israel Katz stated that Israeli forces have no restrictions to act against threats in Lebanon and beyond. He will end it, abandon the security zone in southern Lebanon. Netanyahu also ordered the army to respond forcefully to Hezbollah attacks. Israel's interpretation is that the ceasefire cannot become a shield for the pro-Iran militia to reorganize. The message is a strong one for Tehran. If the Revolutionary Guard tries to save its influence by using Hezbollah as an external arm, Israel will continue to act. Lebanon has become part of the deadlock because Iran uses armed allies as an extension of its own power. Como extensão de sua própria política. Trump realized this and demanded an end to the actions of these proxies. The American message was that Iran needs to control its allies in Lebanon or face the new response. This pressure changes the atmosphere at the table. It's no longer just a conversation about centrifuges, enrichment, and inspection. It's a demand regarding the entire regional blackmail system set up by Tehran. History helps to understand what's happening. Since 1979, the Iranian regime has learned to survive by creating external enemies, repressing internal opponents, and selling resistance as a national project. The Revolutionary Guard grew within this model. It was born as an ideological force, became a military machine, and later turned into an economic and political powerhouse. The more crisis there is, the more space it gains. But now, external pressure has come at the same time as internal disputes. The regime needs to negotiate to catch its breath, but the Revolutionary Guard fears losing control if the negotiations move forward. Other dictatorships have gone through similar moments. The Soviet Union began to crack when the elite realized that the system no longer provided stability. Venezuela used revolutionary rhetoric while destroying the economy and institutions. Cuba sold resistance for decades, but had to open up economically when reality hit. Iran follows the same logic. It shouts sovereignty, but depends on negotiation. It threatens war, but seeks relief. It talks about unity, but cuts off a congressman live when the internal fight gets out of control. The difference now is that Trump is using pressure and deadlines. The 60-day window is not just a diplomatic calendar. It's a way to prevent Tehran from turning talks into endless stalling. The Iranian regime is an expert at buying time. They agree to meetings, change the agenda, create conditions, blame Israel, accuse the United States, delay inspections, demand economic advantages, and then go back to the beginning. The Revolutionary Guard's strategy has always been to survive against the clock. Trump tries to do the opposite, to turn the clock against them. The Iranians' reaction shows that the pressure worked. If the leadership were united, the state television wouldn't have cut off the congressman in the middle of the interview. If the nuclear program were only civilian and transparent, Tehran wouldn't treat enrichment as an untouchable red line. Every new piece of the crisis points in the same direction. The Revolutionary Guard is trying to hold the regime together by force, but that very force is creating cracks. Trump set the deadline, Israel warned it won't back down, and the Iranian military wing showed it won't accept losing power without reacting. The crisis didn't end in Switzerland, it started to show its true form there. The first day of talks exposed the fragility of a regime that tries to appear unbeatable while it crumbles from within. The Revolutionary Guard may control weapons, ships, militias, and propaganda, but it couldn't hide what mattered most. Iran came to the table divided, under pressure, and without the courage to engage in an honest negotiation. I'm Milson Alves, Global, and my purpose is to keep you accurately informed every day. The news links are in the video description. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and at the end, check out the comments so you can be even more engaged with the Milson Alves community.